Hello, hello. Welcome to Tech Journey Insights, the podcast where we navigate the ever-evolving world of technology, looking at switching careers and creating your very own path. In this series, we hear from very special guests who've done just that. And we continue to share our own stories, exploring the human side of technology and looking at news stories that are shaping the digital world. So let's dive right in. Rebecca, what's going on in your tech journey?
Well, I think we're probably a bit sick of each other at the moment because we've been doing a lot of editing and writing over the last, I don't know, couple of weeks, I think, doing tech. Oh, I keep forgetting what it's called. Tech Career Coach for Teens.
Career Coach for Teens. Yeah, okay. So the Tech Career Coach for Teens is a book that we are crafting for our charity. So we've put in all of our own time. We've just, it's our volunteer hours. Our charity's Technology Books for Children. And we are crafting the Tech Career Coach for Teens to guide teens along their career journey, because tech is impacting every single person and our teens are part of this. So look out for that book later in the year. It's coming to schools, to bookshelves, to online places very, very soon. So the Tech Career Coach for Teens.
And who's our guest today?
Well, Rebecca, our guest today is a very special lady. Let me just read a bit about what she does. Her name is Faith Ruto. And Faith is a certified executive coach, a global speaker, and a TEDx speaker, no less. And she's also a LinkedIn top voice, a podcast host, and an author. Very successful, Faith Ruto. So without further ado, I think we need to bring Faith in and to hear from her. So let's get
here she is. Welcome, Faith.
Hi, Rebecca and Beverly. Nice to see you.
Hi. Thank you for joining us, Faith. Faith, I know our listeners are going to be really excited to hear from you. So start off with telling us what has shaped your career path. Tell us about you and what's shaped your career path.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on the Tech Journey Insights. My career journey started, and I always want to say, when I've been asked the question of journey, I'm originally from Uganda, and my journey started in Uganda. So, of course, there was no technology. I actually want to say the first 12 years of my life, I saw no TV, right? So just let that sink in. I spent 12 years of my life with not even watching TV. There was the only thing we had was a radio, right? Which I remember my grandfather listening to BBC radio all the way from northern Uganda in a small village. In terms of my technology journey, I would say when I was 16, I remember being given a career options. I could either go into business, I could go into technology, or I could become an actress, which is what I really wanted to become because I love talking, as you all know, right? I like talking. So I did a bit of work experience, to try and see if acting was for me. And after 2 weeks of licking envelopes, sweeping the floor of this wonderful theater in Wimbledon, where we lived, nearby, I decided that acting was not going to be for me. It was just too much hard work. So I chose to go into tech because it looks really cool. It looks really interesting. So I studied computer science for A levels. Then I went off to university where I combined business and computing. And then after that, I started my career in Shell, where I was hired actually as an IT graduate. So the idea of, being this, young woman fresh from university, and may I say a classroom of maybe 35, but only about a handful of females. It was really special and it was really interesting as well. And when I started my career, I was one of 3 out of 25 female global team. So that's how few there were, women in tech. And for me, it just made it my mission actually wanting to stay in technology, even though I wasn't a techie. I like to say I was not a techie. I was more interested in understanding business problems, translating it as a business analyst or system analyst, or using my kind of consulting skills. I remained close to tech, but not really mass, in coding or the back end. It was more like the smiley face of tech, should I say. And yeah, my journey started from there. And I spent 12 years with Shell, traveling across Europe, implementing IT systems for global audiences. And it was wonderful, to see the power of tech. And then after my 12 years in Shell, I decided to pivot, not by choice at the time. I think it was, being a new mom. I had two young children, and I had this pull to really be present in their life and spend time with them. And I found myself praying. I'm a woman of faith, so I prayed a lot. And this vision, to completely change my career to becoming a coach came to me, to speaking on stage. So I guess I got to do a bit of acting as a speaker, and yeah, and I continued. But you know, all the back end in terms of the tech stuff, I do it myself. So I would design my website. I would learn about any new technology that was coming up, and I would use that. Recently, I've been involved in a 30-day boot camp by Stephen Bartlett, which is to get coaching products online, which again, is something, for women and men who are running their own businesses. You don't realize the power of having your content or product online, because everything is online now. We shop on big online platforms, so why not offer our products online? So for me, I was actually struggling with that idea, because 10 years ago, my clients wanted to see me in person. If they wanted a coach, they didn't want to at the end of the Zoom. But again, in terms of my tech journey, I've just decided, let me jump in. Let me start seeing what AI can do for me. Creating this digital store in 30 days, I've been able to, put a few things online and actually see people buying it, and which is really exciting, because I'm now thinking, wow, I could be one of those entrepreneurs making money in my sleep, which is really exciting.
That's the
So
ultimate goal.
yeah, so so I think for me, my tech journey has evolved, from that young student, 16-year-old being curious, to then being a student at university, again, only a handful of women, and then going into the workplace where I've had to define my own path and actually lean into my strength as, as someone who's an innovator and more of a people person. But then I think even when I run my own business, tech has been really important. And my message to everybody is that tech is not for only the techie or those that have gone to university. Tech is for everybody, and especially women that have their own businesses. We have to embrace tech. That gives you,
It's wonderful, Faith. It's been so good to hear that. And I liked when you said you hadn't seen TV growing up without TV, because that is very similar to me. I grew up in Guyana in South America. There was no TV, and I first saw TV when I was 12. Also, we were on a family holiday, and I frequently quote that. You'll find that being written in lots of the stuff that I talk about, and the impact it has upon you, and actually being able to access the world of tech and what it gives you. And I wouldn't change my childhood for anything, but it's just really nice to be able to share these experiences, and it shows us the differences and the similarities around the world. I absolutely love that. And of course, all of us here, we're mothers, and it's good to hear about mothers succeeding in the world of tech. So Faith, you've now pivoted, you're a coach, and I'd like you to share what's a common misconception that people may have about the coaching industry. And I should also say, you're just not a coach, you're an executive coach. There is a difference. So tell us, what's an executive coach, please, and then common misconceptions.
Yeah, I would like to say I started by I promoted myself, and this is a common thing when we're entrepreneurs. You don't have There's no career ladder, right? You
No.
can't you can't say, oh, in a few years I'm going to be there, like I'm going to be the CEO, because you're probably already that director. So what happened with my career? When I set up, Transformation 21st, which is my company, my passion really was about transforming people. And I use the word 21st as in this 21st century. And, little did I know, it was about technology. But the idea of, being a coach, the misconception is people think, okay, you need a life coach. So somebody's just going to do things to do with your life. You need a career coach. When you're changing career, someone is going to help you with your CV and finding a job. You need a leadership coach, or somebody who, is in a big corporation and only those that are seen as leaders get sponsored to go on this leadership coaching journey, right? And when I started my journey, I was seeing everybody from all walk of life, from different countries, different sectors, and the common theme was, yes, I want to talk about my work faith, but I also want to talk about life. I just want to talk about what is the purpose of my life? What am I here for? And it became quite holistic in terms of, no one just wanted to talk about help me get a job. They wanted to say, well, what kind of a job do I want and why? So a mom might say to me, Faith, I'm coming to you because, you will understand. I really want to work, but I don't want a 5-day job. I want a flexi work. So can you help me find this kind of work or gain confidence to be able to actually, once I've got the job, have that assertiveness to to request those things. And I realized coaching was just not just this one dimensional element that people think. So that's the big misconception about coaching. Is like it's very silo, but it's not. And then how did I become an executive coach? Just before the pandemic, I was like, okay, great, my kid's a bit older, I'm ready, to take this to another level. And I realized that the kind of clients that I wanted to work with or wanted to work with me were quite senior, and therefore I needed to equip myself with the right skills, and I needed to kind of go back to university again. And that's how I ended up at Henley Business School, for 2 years. And then the pandemic happened, so it was actually virtually. I was doing this executive coaching certification. But what that has allowed me to do is that I can coach people at all levels. And I say executive because that's really, if we're being honest, that's where a company want to sponsor their leaders, right? And the new grads are coming in, but then they're gonna throw, tens and thousands, in terms of coaching training budget at them. They want to, you know, give the training to those that are, are at a certain level in the organization. So calling myself an executive coach gives me that, unique selling point. But it also shows that, yes, I've taken coaching seriously enough to, invest in my development, and that I want to work with a certain, level of caliber. But I coach everybody and anyone who is willing to, to just be curious about what coaching can offer them.
Yeah, it's interesting that you've mentioned there a few women that have sort of got to usually when you have children, you then decide, okay, I need some more flexibility. And I've met quite a few women myself as well that have done that thing. They've got to that, they've had their children, they still want a job, they still want to do things, but they want that much more flexible time so that they can do things around their children. And this does feel like quite a common thing that is happening. So it's interesting, and we can use tech to help us with this kind of thing as women. It really is great because if you've got a digital product, you can work on that digital product at any time of the day, get it online and sell it at any time of the day. So it is one way in, and a good thing for mums or dads that want to have that more flexibility. So it's really, really, really great. So what do you think the biggest challenges are in your sector, and do you have any advice for our listeners about those challenges?
Yeah, definitely. I think our biggest challenge opportunity, I would say, is AI at the moment. Before, AI, even when I started to train as a coach, everybody, I don't think, maybe I met one person that was actually excited for me. I'm not, everybody was like, oh, you're going to be a coach. Oh, there's too many coaches. How are you going to make money as a coach? So already we have this industry where we've got lots of coaches, right? But then now we have tech coming in and AI being able to replicate some of the things that we do as coaches. So, for example, if you do career coaching, where at the moment you help your clients with CV writing or LinkedIn profile writing, AI can do that. Right now, that does, so you need to be, as a career coach, you need to be really switched on and work out what element of your service can AI not replicate? Or the other thing is lean in, so lean into AI and say, okay, AI can now help me and help my clients with this specific activity. I can do something else. So I've been able to actually say to my clients, embrace AI. It's not it doesn't mean that you just put your CV on ChatGPT and then it'll get the job for you. No, you still need to network. You still need to, get your profile on LinkedIn. You still need to be human, right? And it might give you a template, but you still need to take that and make it your own. And you still need to, reach out to those recruiters as a, human to human. So I think the threat in terms of, there is the threat around tech, but I would also say it's an opportunity, and it's actually now we need to start pivoting as coaches and not wait until, you're almost like replaced. Don't wait for the crisis. Now is the time for you to embrace tech as a coach, whether that's life coaching, career coaching, or executive coaching. You need to see technology as your partner, as opposed to this myth we have that it will replace you. It will just make you, and then there's the opportunity with tech to make you more efficient and more productive. One of the challenges we also face as coaches is burnout. And I'm sure for all the entrepreneurs, burnout and overwhelm is something that's very real. But I've been able to, save 20 hours a week by using technology to do some of the things that I would normally take hours doing. I used to have like someone that helped me do research activities, but I can now use, ChatGPT or other tech platforms or systems to help me with that. So I would say let's turn what looks like a threat into opportunity, in our sector, and actually be, at the forefront of tech as opposed to waiting for it to happen to us.
100%. I couldn't agree
Yeah.
more. Yeah, it's embracing the tech and moving with it and seeing those opportunities. That's really, really important. So, you've mentioned you've been, Stephen Bartlett and the Stand Store, and, female founders, and just utilizing tech as you've gone along. And I wonder what advice you could also give to our listeners on how to stay motivated in the face of setbacks. And where I'm coming from this is in the news, there's news stories dominating every day about AI is going to take your job. Let's dispel that myth. It's changing work, not taking it, changing it. There's a lot of nuances there. So, what
Yes.
advice can you share with our listeners to stay motivated in changing times, really?
I think that's a great question. And the key to staying motivated is to always keep asking yourself, what is it that you want in terms of your work? What are you passionate at? What are you good at? What are the things that you don't actually like about your work? And, how can tech help you with that? And I think that this idea that we have to have certainty, which we never had anyway, is a misconception and it's a myth, because we used to think, oh, I'll go to university, get a job, and then I just rise up in the ladder in that organization. But now we're even realizing, that even just getting your first job is very challenging. And then once you've got your job, staying in the organization, becomes a challenge. So rather than waiting, I always say to my clients, be the navigator, right? Every 6 months, make a list of where you are in your career. Try and be someone who scanned the market or the landscape to see what's happening. Where is the opportunities? Where are the threats? Whether that's your job in that organization or just even in the industry that you're in. But also the other advice I would give people is get out and network. If you
Oh,
can't do it
yeah.
if you can't do it physically, make sure that you're present online. So make sure that you are checking in, with your connections, those people that you worked with years and years ago on LinkedIn. Just check what they're doing. There could be people that are setting up a new company. There could be new opportunities. So just don't assume that your world is going to stay stable as it has always been. I think the uncertainty is the new reality, is what I want to say, and is one we have to embrace. So it's about having resilience. It's about having a growth mindset and actually believing, believe that you have something valuable to offer the world, your community, and just make networking just a part of who you are, and not in a transactional way, but in a building relationship. I can give you an example where I know someone from LinkedIn, and I've never met them before, but this person went to a networking event and said they heard somebody else was looking for a coach, and she messaged me and said, Faith, this gentleman is looking for a coach. I went to message this person, and the image, his family photo popped up on my phone. I was like, this is really strange. Anyway, cutting a long story short, this happened to be a father of my children, a friend. So somebody have always said hi to in the car park, but I had no idea that he was looking for a coach. He had no idea that I was a coach. But because of this LinkedIn connection, I was able to get this client that I'm just saying the power of connection. Build those connection, build those relationship, and yeah. keep
Yeah.
your eye open at, to opportunities.
As you spoke there, Faith, about coaching, and I'm going to share
Yeah.
my book, 30 Tips to Self-Development, because I
Mm,
focus on the life coaching aspects of
mm,
coaching. And you were so spot
Mm.
on when you said that life comes in to all types of coaching. People will
mm,
come to you presenting with one thing, but then you've
mm,
also got to explore what else is going on within their
mm.
lives. And
Yes.
I've certainly benefited from coaching myself. That guidance that sometimes we all need, and
Yeah.
that support. And I really liked what you said about self-belief there and resilience, because those are two things that you do need. Sometimes you've got to
Mm.
believe against the odds and
Yes.
having that
Yes.
faith. So, your name is Faith, and having that faith, it's really,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I'm going to throw this back out there to Rebecca and to yourself. You mentioned just, the traditional route, which is rapidly changing, where you
Mm.
go to university, you're climbing that career ladder, and there's only one director position at the top. But yet,
Mm.
you're dealing with an appraisal and being told you're not good enough or something. You're jumping through hoops all the time. But then when you take the decision to be the director of your own life, which is what we've
Mm.
all done, that is really important. So the director title, hey, we're all
Mm.
directors. We're all three
Exactly.
positive, you know, forward-looking women,
Yes.
who are taking control. And that's strength, that's self-belief to get that far.
Yes.
Now,
Yeah.
I'm going to send this back to Rebecca around parenting.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we get onto the parent. We always end up getting onto a parenting topic in these podcasts. And before we came on, we were having a chat about how we parented in the digital age and how we dealt with devices
Mm.
and things like that. And you had a bit of a different approach to me, but you've been quite successful with it. And I think our listeners will be really interested in that. So could you share that with us?
Yeah, so just for everyone listening, I have two children, a boy and a girl, and we have so my husband actually has a PhD in computer science, so he's a proper techie, more than me, and so you'd assume that they would have given, they would have had iPad from birth, but actually we've been very slow in introducing our children to tech. So for example,
Mm.
our both of our children and my daughter who is older than the brother, she's very good at this. She knows exactly the date, the month, and probably the time of the day that she was given access to any tech. And she would always remind us that the brother must not get any early access than her. Just to, so our approach has been our daughter would get, phones, for example, when she was 11. So when she actually needed it, as opposed to when everybody had it, which was the
Mm.
thing. At 9, she came to us and said, "Well, my friend's brother, who's 3, has a phone. Can I have one?" And we're like,
Oh.
Who is he do? What is the 3-year-old doing with a phone? Anyway, that's a parenting. But so we've been very much like, well, just because your friend has it doesn't mean you have to have it. We've always said,
Mm.
we have our own house rules. So from a very early age, they've realized that we are not going to be copying or we're not going to be pressured into,
Mm.
yeah, like following everybody, but we're gonna give you tech when you need it, and
Mm.
then we're gonna sit down and talk about the rules. So, for example, both children, who are now 13 and soon to be 15, they have time limits on their phone. So their dads have gone through all the apps, they've been given time limits per app, and then overall access. So, for example, when they wake up in the morning, their phone doesn't work until 8 because we don't think what
Mm.
are you doing at 7 o'clock. You have to be mindful because
Mm.
we don't want them contacting other children that might be trying to get ready for school, or it's just about disturbing other people, but also for themselves. Your brain is just woken up. Give it a chance before you start bombarded with all the information, which we all do as adults. We wake up with our phone in our hand, and we have to kind of not do the same for our kids. So we do that. And then
Mm.
in the evening during the week, for example, my son doesn't do gaming during the week. He's got access to PS5 or whatever they're called these days, but he's that's he's only allowed that on a Saturday after he's done his homework during the week, and he actually really values that. He really treasures that. He gets a lot of beeping noise during the week from his friends who are online, but he understands that in our house I don't do gaming during the week, and he's actually quite happy with that. But it means we have to entertain him, as parents. We can't just lock him in a room. We have to be available to watch. I've been watching Bart Simpson, the cartoon, with him on on TV after school. Things that we probably did back in our day, right? That they don't do anymore. So it's a very long answer, but I think we obviously listen to their pain points and we make sure that they're not going without. But at the same time, for us, it's moderation. It's like, you take them to a sweet shop, they can buy a small bag, you don't give them everything. And that's what we're trying to teach them. It's important to have a bit of self-control and obviously trust as well. So yeah, so we will make sure that we don't, when they started, for example, my daughter would say, I need to go through your phone for your safety. She didn't like it. I'm like, it's for your safety. But now I'm like, you know what? And then, you know what she said to me? She said, Mom, if I want to look at something, I can just Google it. I can just go on, I can just go on YouTube, or I can go on my friend's phone. And then you suddenly realize, actually, as a parent, you think you're putting all this safeguarding in place, but if they're telling you if they're going to do something, they can borrow someone else's device. So we've now decided actually the best thing to do is build that trust and build that relationship, and and reassure them that we're not going to get mad at you if something happened, but we just need you to be safe and responsible. So far it's working, but ask me in a few more years.
The parenting journey.
I think you've definitely been slightly stricter. So my daughter was 2 when she had her iPad, but I would never have dreamt of giving her a phone that early, like 3 to get a phone. That my children didn't get their phone until they were walking home from school. That was when I decided they needed a phone with them just in case.
Yes.
But yeah, so I've given them tech, but yeah, I've kind of coached them through the tech, and we've had lots of conversations all the way through. So we've kind of done something similar, but I think you've probably just been a little bit stricter than me, and it's interesting to see that approach and still it being okay. I don't know how many arguments you've had about it over that
Not
time,
many, to be
but
honest. To be honest, yeah. I mean, I'm surprised myself, but I think the biggest argument we had was on Snapchat, right? Because so the thing was, and this took me by surprise because I thought, well, they have WhatsApp. So, and then I realized that no one was contacting her on WhatsApp. So then I said, well, what's happening? Do you have no friends? She said, I do have friends, but they're just not on WhatsApp anymore. They're all on Snapchat. And I wasn't actually ready to give her access to, I felt almost a little bit like ambushed because I was like, I don't really know what's going on here. But again, reminding myself that she said, if I want to, I could, and I thought, okay, well, let's just do this, let me understand how this app works. Let me work, let me learn how to set the security, and just trust, a lot. I mean, I think a lot of these things you have to have, you have to take a bit of leap of faith and just trust that it's all gonna be okay. And what I focus on more is how the good that is coming out of it. So for example, to be able to see that during the summer holiday, they're in contact with their friends, because remember, this is their world. I don't know where most people live these days, but gone are the days when you just knock on your friends, they go around the corner. Like I grew up where there was no telephone. You wanted to play, you went down the stairs and knock on your friend's door. If your mom wanted you back home, they'll call their mother, tell send the child back home or something. So but for our children, and especially during the pandemic, I think that's where for us we had to let go of some of the strict rules, because we realized that the technology, is actually for good. They're using it for good. And we have to remind ourselves as parents that just because there's a lot of bad news about technology and social media out there, we don't need to punish our children if we can see that they're using it for good. I think that's the key. As a parent, trust your child, have conversation with your children, have regular, communication with them, know what, what safety are there. And actually my children taught me what they learned at school, and this is great to, to yourselves and all the educators out there. These kids are switched on, the kids are telling me, this is what I can share, this is what I'm not allowed to share. And, this is, I don't talk to strangers. And I thought the school are doing something great. And they normally don't get credit for these things, they know more than the parents when it comes to safety online, which I think is great. Yeah. I think it's really great.
I like that. Credit to the teachers there. We've certainly discussed Snapchat on previous podcast episodes, and I like the way you summed it up there with tech for good. So having those really open conversations with your child. Look at the app with them, talk to them, because there's a lot going on. There'll be an update to the app. So even if it's this way one year, it may not be that way the year. The only way is to keep the lines of communication open. So I want to move us on, Faith. It's been so good. And I want to take you back to, the early parts of your career journey. And, is there anything you would do differently? Any experiences that you've had that may not been as pleasant and that you may handle differently today?
Yeah, I think for me, we were talking about one of the pivotal moment when I had to decide how techy I was going to become, once I finished university. And I remember getting a grad job in tech, and the trainer, on the course that I was on, just said, as girls, women don't tech, women don't code, and that really was shocking because I'd spent 4 years, that's one of my degree learning. I don't know if you remember back in the day, JavaScript and C++, and then all of a sudden, I got the job as a grad in IT, and then being told, well, girls don't do coding. And it just really, and I don't even remember what I said. I don't think I even said anything. I just probably just thought, oh yeah, you're right. You're the expert. Yeah. If I could go back, I was like, if I could go back now as a 40-something woman, I would be like, what do you know about women can't code? We'll probably be fired on the spot,
Yeah,
because because I think about how many women's career that one person affected, right? And the funny story is I've ended up being, advocate for women in tech. So I do a lot of talks, I do a lot of championing. I mentor women for free, just to just see as many women as possible using tech, in all areas of their lives, not just as a job, but in everywhere, where they are. That's what I've done as kind of my legacy. And then the other woman that was on this course, lo and behold, guess what she does for a living? She teaches computer science. So what, and this is, for me, the classic, when you're given a negative, feedback, whether that's by your parents, your teacher, or anyone, your bosses, turn that into something. Don't just, believe what people tell you, because I think for me, I actually did believe it, and it did affect my career in the early days. I left the tech, I was in tech for 3 years, but I did everything possible to avoid getting my hand dirty with coding, because I had this, this voice saying, girl, don't code. And I just, I moved away from my kind of home in technology into more business, which was great. I loved it. But I just wondered, what would have done if he didn't say that? If he had said, what, you're here, you've made it, you're going to be an amazing technology person. Imagine, the power of words, and this is really important back to education. What we say matter, and we need to change the narrative, and especially now, tech journey is about tech being for good, tech being for women, being an opportunity. Yes, there's going to be bump in the road, but we must have this optimistic view that tech is actually going to help us as women and as humans, and is going to make our life better.
Fantastic. I love that. I could just sit here and listen to you talk like that for ages. Now, I'm going to come to something you've just done very recently. I think it's one of your career highlights.
Yes.
You became a TEDx speaker, and I'm sure our listeners will love to know what your talk was about.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Yes, gosh. So my journey into becoming a TEDx speaker started, I would say, when I changed my career from the corporate to being an entrepreneur. And as you all know, from all the famous coaches, whether they're life coaches or career coaches, they've all written a book, which I have also written a book. So this is, I should hold this up now. This is the moment. This is the moment. So I'd written a book, as you can see, and I thought, okay, I'll take that bucket list. What is next? And it was, doing a TEDx talk. And it's always been a myth about doing a TEDx talk. And there's this idea that you have to be invited, which is true, So I can share a story. My husband was invited to do a TEDx talk in Bermuda. And I tell you, I could not wait to jump on that plane. I went to support him, There was no need to, but it was in Bermuda. So I went off and supported my husband to do his TEDx talk. But for me, there was this thing about, I want to do one. But then the question was, what am I going to talk about? And, and how do I get into it? And I've had people spend money, lots of money to apply, to be a TEDx speaker. And I would advise people, please don't do it, because this is how I did it. It happened literally. I decided, okay, this is the year. So that was last year. I said, okay, at the beginning of every year, I always decide what I'm going to be doing. And doing a TEDx was on the list for the year. And then I just went on to TEDx.com website, and you click on event and you start looking at different events around the world. And for me, I wanted the topic to resonate. And the topic I saw was in Cambridge, and it was transformed. So you could talk about anything you wanted, which was to do with transformation. And I thought, well, it has to be. My business is called Transformation 21st. My book is called Transform. My clients say to me, Faith, you transformed my life, you transformed my career. So it was a no-brainer, right? And I had no idea what I was doing, but I just said, okay, I submit my application. I want to talk about transformation and leadership and confidence. And off we went. And I waited, and within maybe a few weeks, I got a reply saying, Faith, you're doing a TEDx talk. And then for 5 months, I tell you, I was rehearsing, I was speaking, I was speaking to myself about, my topic. And the topic actually I wanted to talk about was how to turn fear into an opportunity, right? And then 48 hours before the talk, I got a call saying, Faith, somebody else is doing a talk about fear. And we think there's now 2 people with a topic of fear. And I think, could you just tweak your topic a little bit? And this is the bit I thought, how does that happen? I've literally spent 5 months rehearsing every single word. And this is where you have to have faith, because at that moment I thought, so I was very stubborn. I thought, no, ask the other person to change theirs, because clearly you knew about writer. But they said, no, Faith, the other person is a cancer survivor. So they can't actually just change their story. And this is where I thought, you know what, I can change my story. And I know what I want to talk about. I want to talk about confidence. Because when we talk about fear, whether that's the fear of losing your job, the fear of starting something new, what you need actually is confidence, right? So within that 48 hours, I was able to write a new talk, and I say, and the topic is reclaim your confidence, how to transform, and by using confidence, and that's what my talk is about. So you can watch it. It's on YouTube. I would love to get lots of views, because it's very important to me. But I believe that I was able to pull that talk off because I'd practiced. So even though the content had changed, I had really practiced. I'd already mastered the skill, and this is, for me, the biggest lesson to everybody. Don't be afraid of the uncertainty, whether that's tech or whether that's AI. You have transferable skills. You have things that you can share with the world. You have all the knowledge that you have. You just need to maybe repackage it. You just need to be more adaptable. But for me, my talk, and then I was like, okay, I want to feature key moments of my life in my talk. And my TEDx talk, I won't spoil it for everybody, but I start off in Uganda, with my grandma, because she was the best, person, when I was growing up, and been really impactful in my life. And I started my talk with a bit of Uganda. I then talk about motherhood. So you'll see, me as a mother transforming, and how the confidence dips when you become a mom. And then I talk about how, using certain, I won't spoil it, you have to watch the video, but but the power of your mindset to help you reclaim your confidence. So thank you for asking, but it was a journey and a half.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's a story of confidence. That is real confidence. I love that. as I said, we can talk forever on this topic, but we're coming to the end of this episode, and I've really enjoyed listening to you, and I definitely encourage all of our listeners to head to YouTube and listen to Faith's TEDx. And I'll let you into a secret, Faith. It's on my to-do list to do a TEDx.
Thank you.
I have been thinking about it. You've motivated me today with that. I'm like, you definitely can go for it.
Check it out. Check out the shoes, because I had, I mean, we could do another podcast on the fashion, because I was like, okay, what do I wear? And everybody was like, don't wear red. Some people were like, yes, wear red. And then I wore these shoes, and I could not walk in these shoes. But I was like, I will have these shoes.
You know what? We can do another episode on what do you wear for events. It's really important. Anyway, Faith, it's been fantastic having you today, and I'm going to bring this episode to an end, and I'm going to quote one of your mantras, or your mantra rather, and I'm going to read it. Take a leap of faith. Live by faith, not fear. Be kind. Faith Ruto, it's been a real pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And on screen, I think it's coming up where people can contact you. And if you just like to let the listeners know also again.
Yeah, so I mean, the great thing is, being an author and a TEDx speaker is that you could Google the people now. I can't hide, so you can Google me, Faith Ruto, and you'll be able to find my LinkedIn there. You'll be able to find my website, which is faithruto.com. And, for the listeners, if you are going through a change, whether that's in your career or life, book a 30 minutes free session with me, and you never know where the conversation will go. But the most important thing is, just remember to take a leap of faith, remember to be positive, and keep smiling. And do keep checking out the Tech Journey Insight, because I've learned a lot as well, from Rebecca and Beverly. So I want to say thank you as well for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. Faith, it's been a pleasure, and we'll see you again soon. Hopefully, join us anytime. Thanks, Faith.
Thank you. Bye.
Wow, that was really, really insightful. Yeah, definitely. And I want to see the shoes. I've got to go to that. We're going to have to put the link at the bottom to the talk. And I'm definitely going to go and check out those shoes. And I want to see the talk as well, not just the shoes.
Not just the fashion. Fashion is important. Okay, well, so we hope you've enjoyed this episode, giving you insights and actionable ideas to inspire your very own tech journey. And again, a massive thank you to Faith. It's been really, really good to hear from her. And we'll see you again soon for another episode of Tech Journey Insights, where we'll have another very special guest. See you again soon.
See you soon.